Hello. Hello, hello, hello. I am excited to jump on here today. I'm Kiera of Charm City Buyers. Been investing in real estate for the last 10 years, primarily, really almost all 10 of those being here in Baltimore. Transition from rental properties and just trying to figure out how to leave my 9 to 5, right? To building a rental portfolio, to to flipping, to buying back the block, to doing some development work. Fast forward now, in preparation to start building a new construction project. So we're doing a 54 unit new construction project, a few blocks from Johns Hopkins in the Eager Park neighborhood. The neighborhood will be named Eager Landing. So literally have gone from 22, 23 years old, buying rental properties, buying investment properties, doing what we can to have additional streams of income and all that good stuff, to really intentionally, how do we develop these neighborhoods? How do we develop and invest in neighborhoods that have been overlooked and forgotten, disinvested intentionally? How do we change the narrative on what it looks like to be an investor, to invest in these neighborhoods and in these cities, being young, a Black couple out here getting it done? And in particular here in Baltimore, where Baltimore has so many amazing opportunities, a beautiful city, so much charm in Charm City, of course. It has significant challenges, but challenges that aren't unique to Black cities, right? We've seen a lot of the things and the issues that we see in Baltimore in other places. The difference here, I think, in Baltimore is, one, Baltimore is the birthplace of redlining, point blank in the period, right? It was created here, and so you have these systemic issues. You have this situation where Baltimore, the state of Maryland, rises and falls with the success of Baltimore, but just the policies and the decisions and things that have happened over, way before I was born, have created this situation. And it's almost, I was like making notes prior to coming on here, that some of the challenges are almost like contagion, right? Like it's just like one thing turned into another thing that turned into another thing, that now you're digging yourself out of a hole and a challenge that's like huge, right? We're trying to figure out, how do we solve decades long problems in a few years? And that's really, really hard to do. And the issue is complicated, the history is complicated, and the whole 9 yards. And so the other day, if you didn't check it out, I did a YouTube live on just the market in Baltimore, because I think it's important to kind of set the stage. And I knew that this was coming and probably couldn't do one in one video. And so if you haven't seen that, make sure you do check that out. But in addition to that, I want to go through and just talk about one of the proposed solutions right now for the vacancy problem. Now, I said this the other day, there's a lot of things coming. There's a lot of things being proposed right now. There's a lot of discussions being had. I would say one of the things that I'm super grateful for is that we have earned our rights to have a seat at the table. And so, Chloe just text me. We earned our right to have a seat at the table, which means that we have the opportunity to influence a lot of things that are happening, or know what's going on the ground and all those things. But also, I've always felt the responsibility to also say that most of us don't have somebody that's been around or has a seat at the table, and therefore a lot of times we don't know. And that's what happened in a lot of these other cities. That's what's happened in cities like, whether it's Harlem or Brooklyn or DC, or all these different cities that have had similar challenges when it comes to vacancy, when it comes to reputation, when it comes to crime. Like, it's not a new conversation. It's not a new conversation. And so what I think is that what we can do to make sure that we change the narrative on what it looks like for Baltimore to change and develop is by sharing information and by putting people on and by making sure that the decisions that are made in boardrooms don't miss the folks on the street who where we have an opportunity to do two things which are super important to me, and that is how do we build wealth leveraging real estate. And when I talk about build wealth, I'm not just talking about making money, right? Although the dollars got to make sense, right? I'm not just talking about making money. I'm talking about how do we change the narrative on how we think about money? How do we change the narrative on how we think about investing? How do we make sure that our kids are straight, right? And that next generation is on point. How do we make sure that we're changing and teaching each other how to think? And even more broadly, and honestly, most important to me, how do we make sure that folks are building wealth, leveraging real estate to close the wealth gap? So I'm all about building wealth. I'm all about building Baltimore, right? Because to me, with Baltimore being a I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on YouTube. I'm not sure. But with Baltimore being what it is, right? If we can do Baltimore right, we have an opportunity to create more Black wealth in a more meaningful way, not only for, investors and people like that, but really for the community and folks who have been and of Baltimore for forever, right? And so if you are in Baltimore, you were here in the glory days back in the day when everybody and their mom went to live in Baltimore, all the celebrities lived here, North Avenue was popping. If you were here then, and then you were here when things changed and people left and your block is vacant and all those types of things, you doggone sure should be able to stay, enjoy, participate, and build wealth from that resurgence. And the resurgence is what's coming, right? I understand it's been talked about for a long time. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to say why I think right now could be different. But that's what's happening. And so if we aren't positioned to understand what's going on, number one, and how to take action as a result, smart action, not just doing something because it sounds cute and it looks good online, but making smart, intentional decisions, we can change the narrative on what it looks like for Baltimore to change and develop. So those of you on YouTube, make sure you hit the thumbs up, make sure you're sharing, the video, on Instagram as well. Make sure you're doing that. I'm going to go through a lot of notes. I have an entire report here with tons of information. I tried to do this a little bit later in the day, hoping that more people can tune in and join. But yeah, so wanted to talk about that. So what happened? What had happened was is yesterday there was a press conference. This press conference was held by an organization called Build. So I'm going to start with who is Build, right? Who is Build? Also, before I get to that, real quick, when I talk about making sure that folks know how to make the right decisions and make the right moves, understand this, right? One, I have for the last 5 or 6 years run a program called the NEXTGen Accelerator, focused on how you learn how to invest in real estate, take action, and buy property, specifically here in Baltimore. So how do you navigate this Baltimore landscape where we have all of these nuances and challenges so that you know how to navigate it, right? And so you come in, you learn, you have that guidance, you are held accountable to taking action. And we are collectively out here buying up Baltimore, right? Have been doing that. Has spent about $20 million on acquisitions and rehabs in Baltimore in the last 2 years. And that's not my property. That's all the people in the program's property. I say that to say the information I'm sharing is not for folks to go out here all willy-nilly trying to buy up random things when you don't know what you're doing. Okay? That is not the point of me sharing the information. And it's doggone sure not the point of you to go do that and then come to me afterwards trying to figure out what went wrong and think I got magic strings and a wand to take your bad investment and make it good. That's not how this works. Okay. So I do want to make that very clear. I'm sharing the information and have the resources. But I want to make sure that folks don't take this and like run without having full context and understand how to take action, because you'll hear in this why it's important that those who are buying up vacant properties, those who are investing in Baltimore, actually know what they're doing, because a lot of times folks are causing more harm than good, not only for themselves and their pockets, because it costs a whole lot of money to make mistakes, but because it costs the community and it costs the city and it costs them largely when you come in, buy up stuff, and can't do anything with it. Okay. So coming in my DM or emailing me to try to save you after a bad project, it's tough, because I'm going to say, I told you so. Okay. I always reserve the right to say that. All right. So boom. That is my caveat. So let's dive into it. So Build had a press conference yesterday. Who is Build? Who is Build? Build is it's called Baltimore United in Leadership Development. Baltimore United in Leadership Development is Build. It's a membership community comprised of religious organizations, schools, community associations, business leaders, the whole 9 yards. And they're focused on being able to tackle big problems by breaking them down into issues they can address, right? It is, we collectively see, feel, hear a problem. How do we break it down and figure out what it is that we can do to solve it as a community to add value into the city? Okay. And so they said they build power by building community, right? So very in alignment with what we're all about, being able to just go after, right? Get it done. And so they are known for really helping to spearhead initiatives for Baltimore City schools, getting $18 million invested in Baltimore City schools in 2011. And then more recently, through an organization called Rebuild Metro, being able to do a lot of investment in the Johnston Square neighborhoods in Oliver, Broadway East. Like there's a bunch of properties over there that have been developed as a result of Build. And so during the press conference, they reported and was like, yo, like, let me let you know why we're talking about this. Developed over 450 properties in those areas and neighborhoods where they've done that development, cut murder rates in half, right? So a crime impact if the vacants aren't there to perpetuate it, right? So cut crime in half, didn't displace anyone in those areas and neighborhoods. Owners were able to build wealth because those vacants were developed, property values raised, no displacement, everybody's happy, right? So they've been in the space of real estate for a little bit. So that's who Build is. So they move and shake. They know the players. They can, really hold. They understand the balance between development and creating solutions and policy and working with politicians to really push things forward, not only from a local level, but from a state level, which is really required when you want to make massive change. You need to know who to talk to, not only in City Hall, but up in Annapolis, right? Like that's just how it works. So the report, I said, what is the name of the report? The name of the report is Whole Blocks, Whole Cities, Reclaiming Vacant Property Throughout Baltimore, right? Whole blocks, whole cities, reclaiming vacant property throughout Baltimore. The reason why we have a physical report is because we're special. Right? You can find it online nowadays. I can drop a link actually on YouTube. I will drop a link to the executive summary because I think it gives a really nice overview. Happy Friday. It gives a really nice overview. So I'll drop that in the chat. We have been, as people who are doing the work and out on the streets and doing these properties, we were consulted on the report to say, does this sound right? Or no, what are you guys seeing? What are you guys feeling? If we did X, Y, and Z, do you think it would be A, B, and C? So you'll see in the report when you find it online or what have you, our name is in the front cover. So let's be very clear, right? So this is also why I'm familiar with what's happening, and why is because I've been behind the scenes, if you're not in NextGen, you wouldn't know that behind the scenes, we've been talking about this kind of stuff, right? And like I said, this is one of many initiatives that are being talked about right now in the city on how to eradicate vacants. And honestly, I think part of my job is make sure that folks are talking to each other so that we are all in alignment, can collaborate. Let's get it done because we all have the same goals. Who really cares about who gets credit for what and all that other kind of stuff? But more so, how do we actually eradicate vacants and do it the right way, in a way that is different than past conversations when talk about it and not as much gets done. So anyway, report's called Whole Block, Whole Cities. And so it starts out talking about the problem. Again, a couple of days ago on YouTube, I was on here for like an hour and a half talking about what the problem was, talking about vacants. And so I'm not going to go through that play by play, but I do. And I wish if I was on YouTube more, I would know how to share my screen, but I'm not on YouTube that much. And so we're going to make it do what it do. Drop a 1 in the chat if you're okay with that. Can I make it do what it do? Y'all used to me talking with a talking head anyway. So it starts out with the problem, right? And so we talked about population the other day, right? Population has declined. Point blank in the period. Like math is math. The number of people who live in Baltimore is less now than it was. Baltimore is built as a 1 million person city and has decreased over time. What I'm glad that they did in this report is to differentiate this chart about population decline, right? Was up, went down, right? Was up, went down. They differentiated that with a chart on households, number of households. So if you can see here in the blue, these are number of households. You see the households were higher, went down, went back up, right? So there's a difference between when you're talking about the population in Baltimore decreasing and what's happening from a household size. Again, we talked about this the other day. The numbers say that the people who are moving out of the city are families. They got kids. So the average household size have gone from 3.2 to like 2.4, something like that. People with kids moved out. So that's why you see household size has increased a little bit since 2010, but population has decreased. This conversation about vacants is great. Super important, super critical. It has to happen in tandem with a conversation about schools. I'm saying that I'm putting it out there. If we don't put as much effort, money, like showmanship, all that stuff behind what happens in schools, we're gonna have a tough time. Just being honest. All right, so they have the piece about the household sizes, and then so here's one thing that I thought super interesting and wanted to highlight. About 65% of the vacant properties in Baltimore. Does anyone who was on here the other day remember how many vacant properties there are in Baltimore? How many properties have vacant building notices, VBNs, in Baltimore? Y'all remember? Pop quiz. Pop quiz. Okay. All right. So y'all was tapped in. I see you. All right. So it's about 14,000, right? What percent of those properties are owned by city? What percent of those properties are owned by the city? Okay. There we go. Let me find out y'all actually paying attention. Let me find out I'm actually using my time wisely instead of taking a nap right now and hopping on YouTube, that this is a good use of my time because you're learning. Yes. Love to see it. Okay. So there's about 14,000, a little over 14,000 vacant building notices as of September of 2022. Baltimore City owns about 7.6% of that, or about 1,100 properties. And so cool. Okay. So we woke. All right. Let me tell you, because I woke up from a nap for this. I was asleep real good. Let's be clear. Okay. So of the vacant housing units, those vacant housing units, 65% of them are chronically vacant, is what the report says. They're chronically empty. What does that mean? That means that they've been empty for a long time, right? So these are properties that aren't just, they're in between. Maybe, there was a turnover, an investor, something happened, it's been empty for a year or two. No, right? About 65% of these properties have been vacant for a really long time, are chronically vacant. So why that matters is a couple things, right? One of them is the same reason why I say that you don't want to go run and grab the cheapest house that you can find anywhere because you think you're going to throw someone in Section 8 with it in it, right? One, because you're not going to throw someone in Section 8 with it because Section 8 is not going to allow it. But two, because you are fighting an uphill battle. Anybody in NEXTGen in here? What does it mean? What do we call it when you are the only on a block, or you're buying a vacant surrounded by a bunch of vacants? What do we call that? Those of you who are in NEXTGen, hopefully there's some folks tapped in here. I know for y'all, we talked about some of this on Wednesday already. But those in NEXTGen, if you're investing on a block, or if you know anyway, you're investing on a block and you're by yourself. Somebody said a test dummy. We call that being Captain Save a Block. We call that Captain Save a Block. Or we call that being the first loser in a development perspective. You are fighting an uphill battle. You're not only developing this property, trying to sell this property, trying to rent this property. You're trying to sell this neighborhood, sell this block, rent this community, right? You have to pitch the whole thing. A lot of people don't have the resources, reach, or whatever to be able to make that happen. So what they're saying in the report is exactly that, right? If you are an investor and you're coming into the area, it's hard to be able to redevelop these chronically vacant properties and be able to rent them out or make them homes, or even be a quality landlord, essentially, is what they're talking about in here, if you're on a block that's surrounded by vacants, because the numbers don't work. You're putting more money into the property than the property is worth because the values depress property values in the area, right? So they're like, you can control the condition of your property, but you have to be able to rally the troops of all the owners around you in order to get stuff done, because you're piecemealing it. You only have ones or twosies here or there, and everyone else is like doing their stuff. So I've been in situations where I had to figure out who owns what, get on the phone with the other investors. What are you doing with your property? When are you going to have it done? What do you need? What's going on? Why is it taking long to get it done? Because your success is mine. And that's what happens on a lot of these different blocks. You have mutual destruction, right? If you fail, I am going to be impacted by your failure and your ability not to complete the project. And that's why we have kind of this contagion, this huge, you have like this snowball effect that continues to get bigger because you're reliant on everybody else, which again is why this is why we started the NEXTGen Accelerator, because we're like, we can't do it by ourselves, and we need more investors who actually know what they're doing to be able to get from A to Z. That was the whole point. I remember talking about it at a kitchen table. Michaela was in diapers, and we're like, wow, one day, right, when we're ready, we can make sure more people are in position, because we need folks to know what they're doing. Because if I do it by myself, I'm still going to fail if I can't do the entire block, right? Or there's not other investors on and in the area who can get it done as well. All right. So the report talks about that. And then it talks about like what are the kind of characteristics of different blocks, and what the impacts are. We've gone through a lot of vacant building stuff. Those are important. We talked about that before. Again, if you didn't catch the live I did a couple days ago, I did it on purpose so I didn't have to spend 4 hours on here today. And so here's a really important chart. And for those of you who are in NEXTGen, I'm going to take all these charts and we're going to add it into the curriculum, and I'll dive down deep into them there. But where are vacant building notices located in 2022, right? So here's a map. Here's a map. So this is Baltimore City, right? This is the Inner Harbor. This is Canton. We're in East Baltimore over here, West Baltimore, and Park Heights. So basically what the report is saying is that there's parts of East Baltimore, West Baltimore, and Park Heights that have probably the biggest Can I give you the opportunity to screenshot if you don't want to try to? The biggest concentration of vacant building notices. If you've been around the block, this is not surprising. You already know this, right? So you also see where the blue means that there's vacant building notices with below average sales prices. So the value of the properties in these areas are lower than average across the city. And it has the largest concentration of vacant properties. Got it? Y'all still following? Okay. So, and I'm going to kind of highlight this really quickly, but basically what it's saying is that when you have multiple, more than 3 vacants on a block, you have this situation where the issues of one property becomes the issues of other. If you've been investing in Baltimore for a while, or not, right? If you're next to a vacant or in between vacants and things like that, the vacant next door to you that doesn't have a roof and is caving in, you end up having issues in your property, whether it's water in your basement or rodents or, things like that. The properties around vacants are impacted by the issue of blight in the vacant properties. And so it talks about how much the properties are exposed. And they talk about in this report, they basically say you have vacant properties. So you have properties with vacant building notices, right? So the city has recognized the property as vacant, sent vacant building notices, is recognized as vacant, and is part of that 14,000 number, right? Then you have properties, then you have lots, to be honest. And you have lots, you have all these other kind of different pieces that add to vacants. And then you have properties that are at risk of becoming vacant. And they're at risk of becoming vacant because of its proximity to other vacants, right? Contagion. So if you already have a bunch of vacants on a block, more properties are more likely to become vacant as a result of vacants being there. Okay? Contagion. You have a couple blocks, they got COVID. If you in the room, you are a couple doors down, you finna catch it too. Okay? So that's what this is saying, is that if you have these chronically vacant properties, if you're doing one or two of them and not doing the entire block, you're going to have a hard time being successful long term because of the exposure to other vacants. You have the exposure to the market condition. Okay. All right. So we only on page 30. We only on page 30 something. It's a 120-page report. So it talks about some other cities, things that other folks are doing. The bottom line, though, is that in order to combat the issue, the solution has to be full block outcomes. And so this is the same thing. I'm starting to see more and more NEXTGen jump in the chat. This is the same thing as when someone says, oh, I'm going to do this house and there's other ones around in the area. I'm like, well, can you do all of them? Right? Or can you get other folks in the group to do some of the other ones? Because again, you don't want to be the only, right? You don't want to be Captain Save the Block. So that's the basis of the report, essentially, is that in order to actually solve and move forward with a vacant property problem, you have to have full block solutions. You have to have full block solutions. Okay. So I'm going to be nice. Let me see if I can grab this real quick. I dropped the executive report in the chat. I just dropped the full report in the chat. No worries, because you can find it online if you Google it. So there's about 3,000 blocks in Baltimore that have a property with a VBN, with a vacant building notice. And most of those are in those areas of East Baltimore, West Baltimore, and Park Heights that I showed earlier. Okay. So in the report, what they also say is that the blocks should be prioritized based on the location where you can get the full blocks, control the full blocks, and get them into the hands of folks who know what they're doing to actually get it done. All right. So here is here's kind of the outline of where a lot of the neighborhoods are as far as their market strength and the number of vacant building notices. So there's a bunch of different colors. For those of you, I just dropped in the YouTube the link. I'm on page 44 and 45. How can you get the vacant near your property if you aren't able to get response from the owner at 4 Mile Block in East Baltimore? So that is where, so again, this is where when we're talking about there's a lot of different pieces happening at the same time, right? So one, Kimberly, is to be able to leverage things like 311, file complaints against the other vacant properties if you're not getting response from the owner. And then now that's always been there, but not always very effective, other than the fact that there is a kind of proposal submitted on city council right now to fine people more if they're getting 311 calls. So hopefully that's helpful. But the other piece is now that there's the in-rem foreclosure process in the city where you can give the city addresses that are problem properties and they will try to, it basically expedites the process versus trying to go through years and years of receivership, being able to get the property back into the city's hands if it's not being done. Understand that Vacants in Baltimore, the city, DHCD is not playing with y'all, right? They're going to be holding people accountable. They have been holding people accountable. Policies have changed. Accountability is up, right? Yesterday's accountability is not today's accountability when it comes to having and sitting on vacants in Baltimore. So leveraging whether it's the in-rem and foreclosure process, 311, kind of reporting the owners, those are really your options right now. Vacant houses can fall under the domino theory effects. If one house goes vacant, most of the others next can fall too. Exactly. And that's basically what the report is saying. All right. Those of you who are on YouTube, on Instagram, you might want to go to YouTube. So characteristics of the Baltimore blocks, block by block. So they break down on page 45 the characteristics of the market, right? And they have this cute little color key and what share of the Baltimore blocks have vacant building notices, how many vacant building notices have been rehabbed or being rehabbed, and then a map breaking down where all these different things are. So the kind of green and like the green colors, the blue and the green colors are kind of our neighborhoods and areas with the most challenges. You'll recognize that it aligns pretty closely with that black butterfly conversation that we've had for years. The butterfly has shrunk, but it still has its wings, right? You can see, the resemblance of wings. You can also see that development has occurred, right? You can see that it's not as pronounced as it was in the past. Okay. I don't know. The link that I put in is the one, it should be the whole report. So the first link was an executive summary. The second one is the full report. So again, they're going to focus on the weak and the weakest areas. The blues and the greens is basically where they're proposing that is focused first to help get rid of the vacants, right? So in the weakest area, right, getting control over their vacants, especially near vital assets, the conditions become more stable and predictable. When they say near vital assets, right, we talk about on YouTube, it's Charm City Buyers. Charm City Buyers on YouTube. So this is the same concept as what we talk about. What do we say when we're talking about where and how to focus on where you invest? You want to follow the what? Drop in the chat. Follow the what? YouTube, as you're in here, make sure you're hitting that like button. You want to follow the what for where you focus on investing in some of these neighborhoods so you can ride the wave? Almost. You got to follow the money. Follow the money, right? So you want to go where there's already assets and things happening so that you are riding the wave of development and not out here trying to figure it out on your own, right? And so as these areas and we hit these goals for developing the vacants, you prioritize being around other developments, you prioritize being able to have those whole block outcomes, and you prioritize being able to work within the neighborhood to make sure that you're not displacing people, that you're supporting the community, you're adding value in the community which you're investing, and not being part of the problem. And that you know how to actually get it done, right? Because DMing me after you already did the rehab in a bad area, a bad rehab job, you can't sell a house. I'm not a magician. I'm not buying it from you. So make sure you know what you're doing. All right. So there's a couple problems to solve in order to make this happen, right? So we know two things right now. One, we know that there's a problem, right? There's vacant properties in Baltimore. Why are there vacant properties? Well, there's vacant properties because population declined. And because, and honestly, with household sizes kind of being almost stable or increasing, I think part of it is also the concentration of where those households live, right? Now we have the high-rise luxury apartment buildings and things like that versus people living out, in West Baltimore at a huge rate. And so you have a population challenge, you have vacant houses, you have population decline, you have this kind of system where if there's a bunch of vacants, you're probably going to get more vacants because people probably don't want to live around vacants, and the deterioration of property deteriorates properties next door, right? So you have that kind of snowball effect, that contagion of vacant properties. And then you have exactly what Kim had said before. The city only owns 7.6 or has control over 7.6% of those vacant properties. So a lot of them are privately owned. So then you're like, well, how do I get the vacants, right? How do I get control of the vacant properties? If I only do one or two, it's not going to, I'm putting myself in a position of weakness because I'm out here trying to be Captain Save a Block, right? And then if you add all of that on top of each other, you get to the point of, in a lot of these areas, the cost of construction, the cost of doing the work, the cost of doing what you need to do supersedes the value of the property because there's so many vacants depressing the property values. It's crazy. And what's so crazy about it is a lot of it has the soul of a lot of these issues is redlining. Right? The soul of a lot of these issues is redlining, is that these properties are, the properties were depressed in value, all these things, access to jobs or transportation system, all of these things, like it's systemic. It's systemic and it's such a complicated issue, which is why, although we've been involved in this to an extent by sharing our experience as developers and kind of being, having like the special thanks or whatever in the report, that's great. And right, we're super, we're watching or involved in all the other conversations as well, because it's not a one size fits all in my opinion, personally. All right. So part of the solution, because again, I'm like only on page 50 of this 100 and some odd page report. So the solution has to solve those problems, right? So the solution has to include getting control of more properties and getting control of them not only more efficiently, but getting control of the properties in strategically so that we can get whole block outcomes. So then rather having properties here or there available to purchase, whether that's through, auctioneers or city entities that are selling properties or whatever, how do we get access to the properties more efficiently? And how do we be able to create this whole block outcome where we're giving entire blocks, we're having entire blocks developed at a time versus everyone out here trying to fend for themselves. Although again, right, for us, we've been of the school of thought that one, I'm not finna wait for nobody to figure nothing out, right? Necessarily, I don't, I'm not gonna wait for someone to find a solution. I'm gonna try to create my own, right? So having onesie twosies, or folks, individual small developers who are doing onesie twosie projects all across the city adds value at mass, which is why we have our NEXTGen Accelerator program, where people are learning how to invest themselves, with my support, and then to go off and do it on their own, because we need to also have folks that can do, or we have had needed to have folks who can do scattered development, right? So then rather Clill myself do, 250 properties in a year, we created a community where collectively we're doing that and can make that much more things shake without, one, driving myself nuts, but two, being able to also spread the wealth of opportunity, whether that's wealth for, from a financial perspective for folks individually, or spread the wealth from a community perspective because folks are investing all over the city. And so that scattered site development approach is cool, but it doesn't solve the problem at scale if you're not doing it fast enough, and it's not concentrated efforts, according to this report, because you need whole block outcomes, because the vacants, even if you renovate them, they can become vacant again if all the properties around them aren't also getting done. Are y'all following? YouTube, hit the like button, put a 2 in the chat if you're following. And I'm not going too fast. Yeah, one by one is exhausting. One by one is exhausting. And it takes just as much effort to do a lot at a time. That's not necessarily true either. But the next level, it adds more resources sometimes when you're doing larger projects, but it also adds more, there's more challenges as well. All right, cool. Okay, so y'all following? Bet. So the framework that they are proposing in the report is 5 steps. 1, control the whole block and the whole area. So all vacant structures, lots, neglected properties need to be controlled so that we can stabilize the area. So you want to get site control is what it's called, which means you have the property either under contract or you physically own the property. That's what site control is. So you want to get site control. Then you want to stabilize. So you want to secure the property and create a sense of stability and order for neighbors in the wider network, right? Have you ever done one of them onesie twosie houses on a block, and then you finally get the house has been vacant for 30 years, you finally get the house, and now the community is like, when you gonna get it done? 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 Right? And you're still trying to figure out up from down. Basically is what it's saying, is that you stabilize the properties. So you might do things like make sure that all of the exterior is closed up correctly. You might start and do, some at least enough framing to be able to do the roof, right? You might do some demo, like doing things to stabilize the block and kind of, it's like curb appeal. Y'all like HGTV and act like that's a real, it's like curb appeal. Improving the curb appeal so that you have time, you're stabilizing the space so that you can catch up from there. Okay. Then you make the whole block and area promising, right? So you start to build that momentum. You invest in that whole block and area. So you're rehabbing the properties, you're doing infill activity, which means you're developing that land to prepare to build or do something else with. And then you reinvest, right? So you get healthy levels of reinvestment by homeowners and landlords. So you have people coming in and buying the property. So you have a mixture of homeowners, you have renters, you have mixed income communities, because you were able to control entire blocks and be able to go through that 5-step process. There is what this is saying. Okay. Okay. So on page 56 and 57, it's going through kind of the strategy and activities and things that have to happen in order to make that happen. You can check that out. Cool. Boom, boom, boom. So really the next piece of this really goes into, all right, all that's cool. All right. We know how we want to get it done. We want to do whole block outcomes. right? We know essentially what we're going to do, right? We're going to get whole block outcomes. We're going to stabilize the area. We're going to do some renovation. And then it's like, okay, that's cool. We have the what. Then it's the how, right? Then it's the how. And exactly. And the how is the money. How we finna do that? How we finna buy these properties from these owners, get control of them? How we're gonna do and stabilize the properties and do these renovations? Because remember, we're talking about doing this in areas where the value of the current value after repair value, market value post renovation is usually less than the cost of renovation in a lot of these places. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so how do you combat that? How do you combat so the cost of construction? How do you combat the fact that it costs a whole lot of money? It's a whole lot of money in this mother, right? To get full blocks done. Then you have developers who are doing this, and you're holding a block of properties, you're paying taxes, you're paying water bills, you getting the properties trying to help out, but you still getting environmental fines because somebody took the board off because they thought maybe there was copper inside. Right? So it's money. And those of you who are doing onesie twosie houses right now, or will know that a lot of lenders don't want to lend on properties when you're buying them for less than 50,000, if not less than 100,000, unless you know who to go to and who to talk to, right? So you already have a situation where folks are having problems trying to finance one property, let alone an entire block. I say that to say, right, this is also for folks who haven't kind of done the development, right? When you've done development, you know where, for the most part, where to get the money, who to call, how to move. But when you're transitioning from investor to developer, a lot of times you have no clue. You have no clue how to get that done, or have the relationships to be able to navigate that on the forefront, which is also why I'm like, if you ain't bought nothing before, starting with an entire block, if you haven't done some projects, gotten some onesie twosies done under your belt, trying to go and do a block because it sounds cute is a bad idea. And I'm saying that with my chest. It's a bad idea if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have the resources, the team, whatever it is, because the challenges that you have with one become exponential as you increase the number of properties if you don't know what you're doing. And then you're perpetuating the issue because you're buying a vacant to get it done. It's staying vacant, and now nobody else can get anything done. This is why I'm like, I am rah Baltimore. I'm rah investing. I'm rah doing this stuff. I'm rah getting the rehabs done. I'm rah all of that, but with intention and with the right information and the right resources. You all are not going to get BS from me. I'm not about to tell you to go out here and do dumb stuff because I want you to join NEXTGen, because frankly, I love you. I don't care if you join unless you're buying property here, right? Unless you are actively buying property, you're trying to figure out you want to do it the right way. I'd rather be there to support you through the process, but I'm not here to sell you nothing. Let's be very, 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 very clear. I am doing this and doing literally this, sharing this information, because there's too many people who come in without having the information and the resources and think because something's cheap or because they know and hear and understand that there's opportunity here that they can come do whatever all willy-nilly, and not understand that there is a little bit of science, right? There is a little bit of science. And for me to actively be investing in Baltimore, I have to, and it's in the report. Like, everything I'm saying makes sense. And I'm like, dang, I've been saying this for a long time. Like, it's making sense. If you want to invest in Baltimore and you don't know what you're doing, you're risking my investment. That's why I share the information. That's why we created NEXTGen, and we're like putting people on and guiding through the process. Because if you fail, you're making it harder for me to succeed. So when I say things like your success is mine, I mean that, because I'm doing the work too. I'm doing the work too. So if you come in and buy a vacant house on a block where I have 3 of them and you grab 1, right, or 2, If you don't know what you're doing with those 2 and they stay vacant, you're messing up my 3. So I need you to know, help me, help you, help me. That is the entire premise of me spending the time on social media, spending the time on YouTube, doing all this stuff, doing NEXTGen. Although NEXTGen, y'all know I love you in general. Like I love them and I love what I do and I love why I do it. But understand that it's the passion behind it is because if you fail, you're making it harder for me to succeed. Does that make sense? Like, I need folks to understand that. And I think the vibe comes through. But like, you know what I'm saying? Come on now. All right. So I should have took a little bit longer nap because apparently I'm on one today. Okay. So the next part is the cost. That's what I was talking about before I got on my rant. The next part is the cost, right? How to get the money. So we'll talk about how to get them. So what they're saying in this, right, when it comes to getting the money is that it needs to be a city. What needs to happen is we need to be able to have the ability to get control of these properties, right? Get control of these properties, and we need to be able to get control of these properties. We need to be able to fund the acquisition, the renovation, and we have to be able to close the gap when we have issues where the cost of construction exceed the value of the property until you get to a point of equilibrium where now you've done some properties. Now the property values have increased and you don't need that gap filler anymore. And so what this report basically does is outline some ways to create an entity. They talk about a special purpose entity. That entity would be a quasi-governmental organization that can acquire the properties, that can get funding from the state, and be able to basically get bonds from Wall Street, essentially, to be able to help fund the rest. So the $7.5 billion they talk about in the articles and stuff like that is a mixture of public money and bonds, right? Being able to essentially get folks to put money up in the forms of bonds that basically get paid off through the execution of developing these properties. Great question. So what does this mean for the small one property at a time investor? What it means is let me be clear. I'm glad you actually asked that. This is a report. And what happened during the press conference is that the mayor said that he is supporting the idea, right? There's a good ways to go because there's a state component to this and the whole 9 yards. So there's a lot of people that need to say, I support what's in here and the vision that was set forth by Bill. The onesie twosie small property investor is still critically important in all of this. Critically important in all of this because there's only certain areas and neighborhoods where full blocks need to actually be done. So you still need this scattered site development to happen. What I'm saying is that I need the small property, one property at a time investor to know what they're doing. That's my thing. I need the small one property at a time investor to not be getting over their head and then don't know how to find a contractor, don't know how to get permits pulled, don't know how to navigate inspections, don't know how to, whatever, all of those things. One, and two, I personally think the small one property at a time investor should be in areas and neighborhoods where doing one property at a time works in the market, so you're set up for success, versus being the small one property at a time investor in neighborhoods where you are the only investor on the block, because that creates challenges. Or you just go into that eyes wide open because you know and understand what that actually means, right? So I'm not saying that investors shouldn't be doing onesie twosie properties. You need people to do onesie twosie properties. That's critical to like the overall, like the full city outcome. But the onesie twosie investor should be making sure that they know how to navigate so that you're not buying a property to buy a headache, but buying a property to actually get a return. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So what does it mean? Took me 8 tries to find a lender to see the vision of my property is by Hopkins. So it's also about knowing who to go to. And I think, and I'm talking about NEXTGen because that's my frame of reference for access to information. But you have to know sometimes you have to know where to go. Like the larger national investors or national lenders don't always know what is going on in Baltimore, so they don't get it. There's some local lenders, some are more Baltimore City friendly than others. And honestly, some lenders are trying to save you from yourself. And you have to know the difference. You have to know the difference. All right. So, and I'll do like a large, broader Q&A at the end. But yeah, so that's what this report is basically doing and saying. It's that we need to be able to get control properties. We need to be able to get full Black outcomes. We need to be able to get access to money, right? And they estimate $7.5 billion to be able to get this done. They said it's about $125 million per year over the next 20 years. So it's a long-term solution. It's not overnight. It's focused in some areas in East Baltimore, West Baltimore, and Park Heights in order to get it done. So you'll have developers who would potentially, knock out some of these blocks, and then you would have you'd have developers who are getting the big blocks done, and then you'll have the individual investors who are working to, kind of fill the gaps in the areas around there. Okay. So how can individuals support the vision? So Build is the organization. So you could always kind of, tap in with them. Baltimore United in Leadership Development is the organization that put together the report. They do and have done a bunch of stuff in the city. It's comprised of a ton of people. What I would say as an investor, you want to understand the economic stuff that is in here, right? Because real estate it's economics, micro and macro, even at the city level, right? It's like micro, we're talking block to block, but macro, we're talking all these other factors that are impacting things like population or income or all of those types of things. And so this is really a cool way to see that, but also understand that there's tons of opportunity in this because having these full Black outcomes become a huge advantage to everybody else, like around those areas, investors in and near those areas. This, should it get fully funded and supported on all levels, becomes the next money that you follow, right? What blocks are being focused on, who's doing what where. So as a onesie twosie investor, following that is a really great idea. Highly suggested. Following what happens on this over time. I know we'll be talking about updates and things that shift and happen with, on our weekly sessions with our NEXTGen folks. What are your thoughts about crime, its future and impact on real estate? So, and we talked about this a couple of days ago as well. I think the vacancy issue, the vacancy problem, definitely spurs the crime issue, right? I think it's important to note that a lot of the crime is very concentrated in certain areas, and those areas tend to have issues with vacancy. So as properties get developed, you also will see properties get as properties get developed, you'll see crime kind of starting to shift, right? You'll see things kind of move along. The report is called Whole Blocks, Whole City, Reclaiming Vacant Property Throughout Baltimore. And so you'll see as properties get developed, the crime kind of pushes out as well. There's again a lot of things that has to happen, right? I think the conversations that are happening around transportation, our transportation system in Baltimore is really important. The conversations that are happening around schools are critically important. And transportation is important because it's really hard to get from West Baltimore to East Baltimore if you don't have a car. So you're stuck in certain areas that may not have access to jobs, and you're putting people in positions where they have to survive rather than thrive. So transportation, following those types of discussions are going to be really important. Following discussions around schools is going to be really important. Following discussions around vacants, obviously, is going to be really important. And then what also, and I didn't even get here yet, what makes me really excited about all the conversations that are happening across the board when it comes to Baltimore is that right now we have a mayor who is of and from Baltimore. Bro is from Park Heights, right? We have folks who really, despite all of like the drama that happens in City Hall, we despite all the stuff that happens along City Hall, we have a lot of politicians who love this city. They love this city and they really, I think, at their core, want to see good things happen. So we have that. And then at the state level, we have Governor Westmore, who knows and understands that the strength of Baltimore is the strength of the city and really want to see Baltimore succeed. So we have this window of time where, like, we can actually make substantial moves, right? We can actually make really, really monumental shifts and shifts on a lot of the challenges that have been here for a long time. Because right now we have synergy between the city and the state. And that hasn't happened in a really, 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 really long time. And that's what makes me excited about this. That's what makes me excited about the conversations about the appraisal gap bills, the land bank conversations, even like the CLTs, the community land trust conversations. Like there's so much moving and shaking across the city or about the city that has such a huge impact. And we're actually in a position where we can get things funded in a real way. I went to an event last night that was focused on North Avenue and the fact that there is $10 million available to be able to address the vacancies and the opportunities along North Avenue. Like there's just a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's money that is going to be able to flow in a way that hasn't in the past, because I think there's been a lot of people who didn't see the opportunity in Baltimore, which again is why it's important that those who want to be involved and those who want to invest and want to make an impact are positioned and able to not only get started, but to actually succeed and know what they're doing, which is why we have NEXTGen. Is there anyone in this group? Okay, got it. Do you think the short-term rental requirements hurt Baltimore's development potential short-term rentals? I don't think it hurts it. No. I don't think it hurts. Obviously, if there was Airbnbs and stuff like that was like openly available or able to move and shake, we'd have more the numbers would work better for some of the areas where the cost of construction, if you want to rent a property, the construction is too high, you're not going to get a return. Your cash flows are too low. You have people who have super low cash flows. When it comes to doing repairs, they ain't got the money for it because cash flow is too low, or they shortchanged the rehab, put somebody in there, cash flows are low, and now they have deferred maintenance that they can't afford to do. That creates this environment of slumlords that I think we've had for a super long time. Airbnbs may make it easier to do the renovations because you're going to get higher returns, but it's going to create another problem. And that problem is displacement. I think Airbnbs, those types of short-term rental strategies could have short-term advantages, but long-term disadvantages. So if we say it's important for us to add value in the communities in which we're investing and not displace people and all those types of things, Airbnb and those short-term rental things would hurt the intention behind Baltimore development, right? So like yes and no, right? Also understand Baltimore is a heavy hospital city. There's ways to get your return and not, break the rules when it comes to short-term rentals in Baltimore. It's not a bad idea to do long, like furnished rentals, traveling nurses, stuff like that here. All right. So let's jump into questions because I feel like I've said a whole lot of stuff. I'll drop for those of you who want to learn more about getting that support on learning, understanding Baltimore, as well as investing in Baltimore the right way, as I like to say it. I will drop the link for NEXTGen in the chat so you can check out what that's all about and how to join. Could the city use eminent domain to repossess property from these negligent vacant property owners we can't get in contact with? Eminent domain has been a bad word in Baltimore City for a really long time because of predatory practices that have happened in the past and pushing people out and all of these like crazy, ridiculous things. I don't think it's off the table for this next phase of what needs to happen. I don't think eminent domain is off the table. What I really look forward to is seeing and understanding how we merge and collaborate and, really align, because the goals are already aligned, but like how this works and fits with this special purpose entity that has been proposed, with kind of the work and progress already being made by the city and DHCD. And again, those other projects and proposals that are out there right now, like how they all come together, collaborate, and we all win collectively. Yeah, but eminent domain definitely not off. I don't think it's off the table, especially when it comes to being able to get these full black outcomes. You're gonna have to do something, especially if you can't get a hold of the owners. They're not only absentee, they're just like completely negligent. There's not many other options. Now, the difference between now and when eminent domain was used in the past is eminent domain was used on properties where people was in there, right? Uncle Johnny and Auntie Mabel was living in that house. They was chilling, bro. And so eminent domain was literally putting people out, whereas these properties have been vacant. And according to the report, 65% of them chronically vacant for a super long time. So yeah, eminent domain becomes more of an option. Yep. All right. So I want to open it up for questions. I know I like only zoom in when I'm talking to Michaela through the report, but I wanted to hit like those highlights so that you get the gist of the conversation, because it's a really, really important conversation. But I also want to make sure folks know and understand how complicated the discussion is as well. And it doesn't spur more negligence by people trying to hurry up and do something and buy these things and do X, Y, and Z if you don't know what you're doing, because that is a direct contradiction to what is in this report. If you buy a vacant and you don't know how to make it occupied, or you don't know how to, or you're in a position where you could potentially perpetuate the issue, you're not helping us solve anything, and you're probably hurting yourself. You're probably hurting yourself. And so rather than having tons of speculation and people misunderstanding and making moves and decisions off of an article versus off of the actual report, I'd rather hit the highlights and people get some understanding of what's going on at some level, and just get the real on it. Like, I do this every day, right? And have been, have known this was coming for a while. No, this is not. So again, this report was not done by the city. This report was not done by the city, so you can't get it at City Hall. No. How long realistically do you think it'll take to see noticeable change? So noticeable change. So let me say this. Let me say this. Are there penalties for holding on to a vacant property? Absolutely. Don't do it. Absolutely don't do it. If you follow me and you buy a vacant property and you hold on to it, please expect me to knock on your door. And I fight in real life. So no, I'm just playing. Yes, there are. There's fines. There's tons of different ways now for them to take it back. It'll cost you a crap ton of money to get excited about the fact that it's only $500 a year for property taxes. You're forgetting all the costs it'll take for environmental fines, for the community to be on your butt, for the city to be threatening to take it back. 9 times out of 10, when you buy a vacant property, you have 12 months to get it done. 12 months to hit that use and occupancy. All right. So how long realistically do you think it'll take to see noticeable change? One, let's be very clear. There has been noticeable change in Baltimore City. So let's level set there. And I know that's not necessarily what you're asking. I'm going to get to like your question, because you're probably like, with this, how long is it going to take for this to get active? But I like to talk. So let me do so I'm going to do it. So let's be very clear. There has been noticeable change in Baltimore. Very noticeable. There are areas and blocks literally that used to be extremely vacant that now have tons of homeowners. And I say that as someone who bought blocks who were extremely vacant and worked on blocks that were extremely vacant and now are completely full of homeowners. So there has been noticeable change. The noticeable change is also seen when you look at the reports. I went through the other day, the YouTube I did on Wednesday, and we talked about the change in property values, where the property values, the average sale price of properties increased by 103% in neighborhoods that were chronically vacant. They increased 103% in 3 years. So properties were selling for $42,000 on average, and now they're selling for $78,000 on average. And that's because people are buying vacants, renovating them, and selling them, and folks are living in them. So there has been noticeable change, right? Noticeable change. Shoot, all of Harbor East is a noticeable change. It didn't exist. All of Brewers Hill is a noticeable change, but also in those neighborhoods and areas that have seen chronic vacancy for a really long time have seen noticeable change. So I just want to, I know that probably wasn't exactly what you're asking, but I think it's important to recognize that we've seen a lot of noticeable change in the city. But when it comes to this, there's still work to be done. So in order because remember, a big part of the solution to the challenges outlined in this report is creating this special purpose entity. And part of that is how they propose that special entity is set up and who runs it, funds it, the whole 9 yards. So there's been a lot of conversation, things happening behind closed doors, but there's definitely more work to be done. The report also is basically saying that it's going to take, 15, 20 years to knock everything out, because as you're doing some vacants, right, there's more vacants coming. So you're kind of fighting back and forth. This is the Whole Blocks, Whole City Reclaiming Vacant Property Throughout Baltimore report. So it's a long-term solution, because it's not going to be overnight. But in order to get things up and running, there's work that has to be done on a political level, not only from a city level, but from a state level. So this will be a conversation for a while. But also understand that there's already been $100 million committed to eradicating vacants that aligns with this. I have to join your training because I'm spending more on fines and water bills. Yeah, please get your properties done. Please get your properties done. And a lot of times it's not your fault. And also a lot of times it is a matter of not actually understanding how to buy property well. So sometimes my answer to folks is you will have to be willing to take this L and charge it to the school of hard knocks so that you can go into it better next time. That I'm going to tell you what it is, right? Because there is no magic wand. You make money when you buy in real estate, which is why folks should be learning and understanding how to navigate before they jump in. But if you already have the property, then there's, sometimes some things that we can do, or suggestions we can make to help make sure that at least you're getting it off the ground in the right way. Where do I find information on local lenders who are favorable when dealing with these types of buys? Honestly, for me, there's certain lenders that are probably better in certain areas and for certain things. So it's about your property, where you are, what your goals are, and you have to be open to feedback, because sometimes these lenders are trying to help you save your butt. Is there any other crowdfunding that is investing in real estate in Baltimore City? I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say about some of the things that we're working on, other than the fact that we spent the last 2 years working on some really exciting stuff. And you should definitely make sure you're on our email list, and so that you know how to play a part in that. Folks in NEXTGen know how to pick up what I'm putting down. I don't know if y'all are, but we have been, we've done the stuff ourselves. We created the community. We've done the work. We own the construction companies. We're doing all those things. It's time to be in a position to collaborate in a really real way financially, and to be able to not only invest and scale those investments, but also be able to help when it comes to providing funding for projects where otherwise folks have a really hard time to fund, if the deal makes sense, right? I can make sense of deals doing the work every day that maybe somebody who's sitting in an office in Silver Spring can't, because they just don't understand Baltimore in the same way. And so it's time for us to add a component that we've been planning on adding for a really long time, and that is one that is financial. Make sure you're on our email list. Yes, I'm in systemic change with policies, the way the city handles the issue. So, Kim, I think the conversation right now is, how do we get as much done as possible with the current setup we have from a political perspective on the state level and the city level. So the fact that we have, Governor Westmore has been in office for a month, and that man is moving and shaking, because we have a window that we haven't had in a really long time, and everybody is trying to make sure that we can get as much done as we can now. So I have seen and heard of a lot of things that have happened and are coming even within the first couple weeks of him being in office, because we all know what time it is, and it's time to get the work done. I like to buy a vacant home from the city. How do they conduct their pricing? I feel like I may insult them. So currently it's an auction setup, but there's actually a proposal, and I talked about this a couple of days ago. There's a proposal right now to have a fixed priced model when it comes to buying property from the city. So basically, if you are, actually, I think I might still have the notes here. If you are a for-profit, like a market rate investor, developer, you're going to pay one price. If you're a nonprofit, you'll pay another price for property, and then the same for land. If you're a developer, you're going to pay X for land. If you're a nonprofit, you're going to pay Y. So they're proposing a fixed price model to be able to streamline the process of buying properties from vacants, because as the city gets control of more vacants, they don't want to just have more vacants on their books, right? If they don't streamline the process of getting it in the hands of people getting it done, they become the bottleneck. So as they're trying to figure out the solution for getting more properties, like in REM, like maybe the special purpose entity, like all of these different things, the other side of it is getting it out, right? How do I get it in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing? And so there's a proposal right now. They'll be asking for public feedback on it, but it's basically a fixed price model to cut down on the auction process, bidding, and all those types of things, and be able to get the properties out the door faster. If you are bidding on properties, I'll tell you the bottom line typically for houses is like $5K. Usually it's like $5K minimums sometimes 3K, depending on what's going on. I do know in the proposed fixed price, it's 3K, but also understand currently it's still auction. So when you give them a bid, they'll probably tell everybody, hey, we have a bid on this property. What's everyone's best and final? So you have to be prepared for that. And of course, make sure that you have a full process. So you not only have the money to buy the property, you have a plan on how to renovate it, and you have a plan to renovate it. You have a financial plan to renovate it, and you have the experience. You and or your team have the experience to actually get it done. Does this mean that the small investor will have less access to inventory? Not necessarily. No, because this is focused on specific areas. One, two, it's focused on specific blocks. And so outside of those blocks and outside of those areas is I shouldn't say free for all, but like, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's going to do that, but it might, I could see an impact being that smaller investors kind of get pushed into buying properties that may cost more on the front end. Acquisition would increase. It would probably have smaller investors doing less like full gut, huge rehabs, but also that's not fair to say either, right? But I could see it. I could see like who I see potentially being impacted if this is done well is like the wholesalers who are trying to like just scoop stuff up randomly, right? This entity may have more a better ability to get the properties faster, get contact with people faster, maybe spend a little bit more money because the pockets are deeper in order to get control of the property and push like those types of folks. But I'm the school of thought of the types of blocks and the blocks that they're talking about in this, the smaller investor probably shouldn't be on those blocks. It's kind of the point. Because you're not setting yourself up for success, not set up for success to fund, not set up for success from evaluation, not up for success for long-term occupancy. And it creates a situation where that property could become vacant again in a shorter period of time than necessary because you're in the space of contagion. This is what I'm naming it now. Congratulations. Glad to see you both succeeding and doing great. Oh, nice to see you. Awesome. Thank you so much. Do they share if these vacant properties will have liens, or would you just need to get your own title company to do that research? Vacant properties in general. So like in this, it would be clear. The way this is set up, it would be clear, free and clear properties of the liens and encumbrances. In general, when you're buying vacant property in the city, you doggone sure need to have a title company doing research. You should not be buying vacant properties in Baltimore without a title company. You should not be buying vacant properties in Baltimore with a quitclaim deed. Do not do it. A lot of these vacant houses have tons of environmental fines, tons of water bills, tons of back taxes. They've been sold at tax sale 50-11 times. They have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of attorney's fees because of being sold at tax sale. This is not the city to be buying property with quitclaim deeds. Please don't. Please don't. Those properties been sold at tax sale one or two times, have $7,000-8,000 worth of attorney fees on them. Do not do that. I don't care what happens with this. I could toss this report right into the harbor. I don't care what happens. Don't do it. Get a title company. That's what they're there for. And if you're buying from an auction and the auction says that you're going to take don't get it. I'm telling you right now. Yep. And ground rent. Yeah, you can redeem your ground rent. Ground rent's common here. It's more of a pain in the butt than anything else. And it's about who your lender is. Do they understand Baltimore? That's a big question when it comes to ground rent and whether or not it's an issue or not. But if you don't know up from down, just go ahead and redeem it and add, $2,500, $3,000 to your purchase cost and redeem the ground rent. If you're flipping property, you should be redeeming the ground rent when you buy or starting the process when you buy. So by the time it's time to sell the property is fee simple and you don't have to worry about it. Some lenders are going to require the ground rent to be redeemed, and some ground redemptions can take 6 months if the ground rent holder is unknown. So there are definitely some things you should know about ground rent, especially if you're flipping. If you're a landlord and your lender will deal with it, you can pay your little $100 every 6 months or whatever it is. But it's when it comes time to sell that it can become an issue if the person buying the property has a lender that wants the property to be fee simple rather than subject to ground rent. But it'll cost a couple, usually like between $2,000 to $2,000 to $3,500 maybe to redeem the ground rent. So you have to understand that is part of the cost. Understanding Baltimore makes the whole process a hell of a lot easier. All right, additional questions? Can y'all let me know, was this helpful? Was this helpful? I really want to know. Was this helpful? Because usually, honestly, I would only do this within NEXTGen, but sometimes there are things that pop up where I'm like, if folks are making decisions and making moves that don't make any sense, again, if you fail, it makes it harder for me to succeed. And I like success. I like success. All right, awesome. Someone said sent by God. You know what? I'm gonna take that because you know what? It's not like sometimes. Can I just be honest? Sometimes it is not easy, right? Sometimes it's not easy to actually be doing the work and sharing the work, and I'm involved in all my mentees projects. So I'm worried about what y'all doing, and then I'm worried about what people who are not in NEXTGen doing, and people not in NEXTGen like, oh, I want all the information, but I don't want to join the group, and like all that stuff. And I'm like, bro, I just want to take a nap on a Friday. I just want to take a nap, but I wanted to show up. I want to show up for y'all because I want to make sure we all do our part. And it's important that we all respect what each other's part is. And we understand our value, the value that we add. Mine, I think, is being able to share, break this down. Like we've built this platform, and I feel like it's our responsibility to leverage it. But even when we started this whole thing and created our first Instagram, our Instagram and all that kind of stuff, at the time it was, we can't do this on our own. We can't do all the properties in Baltimore. So how do we kind of demystify the process? Number one, make sure folks understand the real on real estate when it comes to investing in Baltimore, and put more folks in position to succeed so that they're able to build wealth through real estate, but do it the right way. So the community is able to build wealth through real estate, and collectively we can build Baltimore. And so at first it was just sharing on Instagram. Then a lot of people were asking questions. So we created some courses, but they were very much self-paced and people were asking me a ton of questions. And so then we're like, okay, so I created NEXTGen where I was able to be in it, right? And guide people through it and answer the questions as people are figuring out where to buy, how to buy, where to find contractors, how to get, navigate the lenders and all that kind of stuff. Being able to be part of that, but in a group setting, because everybody's doing the same thing, so that folks are able to learn from each other, partner with each other, share resources with each other, do all those things while I'm guiding the group. So I'm still able to do what I do, which is develop properties, buy, renovate properties, consult on projects like this, right? Do those types of things, be involved in affordable housing, be able to do the work as I'm putting folks in position to do their work so they can build for themselves, so that when it comes time, I can say, okay, everybody in NEXTGen, we've had about 1,000 of y'all. It's time to go to work. Y'all did your onesie, twosie houses. You've gotten an understanding. Now at this level, I can say to the city, to the state, to all those things, okay, I need grants and funding for my folks to do X, Y, and Z. Or I need, I want this area to be for us so that I can make sure and disseminate properties and do this stuff so that I've taught these people how to be successful. So now there is no mutual destruction because I know that you know how to succeed because I taught you that. right? So now I'm surrounded by people that I can trust to get it done because I know the person across the street because I taught them what to do. The work that we've done, to be clear, has been very strategic because we knew this was coming. We were in enough room to know this was coming. So we've been setting the foundation to say, okay, here's social so people know what's going on. People are understanding Baltimore and seeing Baltimore in a new way. It's not just the wire. There's tons of opportunity. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to eat. Come hang out. It's cool. We're cool. Hey, hey, hey. Right? And then say, okay, here's what you need to know so you can invest. Buy property, do what you need to do it on your own, maybe bump your head a couple times, but still win. Let's go. Let's get it. Boom, boom, boom. We're buying up property. We now become collectively the biggest buyer of residential real estate in Baltimore. Play with it, right? To be able to say, okay, now it's time. Let's go, right? We were able to do onesie, twosies. You got your property, you got your rentals, you did your thing. Now, NEXTGen, right? Now, NEXTGen is time to get to work. Because the point was, how do we make sure we're surrounded by people who know what they're doing so collectively we're able to find success? I'm not out here and have somebody random who don't know what they're doing all around my properties, making it harder for me to succeed. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to put people in position. And now we were strategic and now it's time, let's get to work, right? We got the fund, got all this stuff moving and shaking. Let's go. Let's go. So I think it's also important, like, again, I'm not a salesy person. I'm not like, oh, boom, boom, going crazy with begging people to join the program. Because if I got to beg you, you already missed the point. But understand the point is bigger. The point is huge. And the point has been set for a very long time. We did our stuff and we're doing our stuff and we're raising the bar. We're raising the bar. We're raising the bar. And now it's time to get to work. We're positioned to do a lot, so much, but we can't do that unless people know and understand what they're doing. And so if you're not NEXTGen, that's cool, but I definitely need to make sure you at least know what's going on and you know what to look for, at least at a high level of questions to ask. So you're not making it harder for my folks in NEXTGen to do what they need to do because y'all might own the property next door to them. And I need to make sure they're successful. So when it's time for me to pick up the phone and say, all right, I need you to take 2 on this block. I need you to take 3 on that block. I need you to do 1 here and 2 there and da-da-da. With 1,000 people, I can knock down, they give me a section. I can knock that down because I've already built the scale. The scale was built into the strategy for the last however many years. Like, I'm telling you, she is not one to be played with because she has a vision. And she gets it done. So y'all got me talking in third person because now I'm in my bag. Now I'm in my rant bag, okay? She's strategic. She set the framework. She put it together. Now it's time to get to work. And that's what it's all about. Like the folks who have been through NEXTGen, I got folks have students who are doctors who built their portfolios and left their doctoral jobs. But you don't hear me saying that kind of stuff all the time because I'm like, I don't want folks to speculate and think, oh, if this person did that, I can do the same. She had support, right? Through the background and the other folks who have built huge portfolios. They had support to set the right foundation of understanding so they can make more intentional, well thought out decisions so that as they built their portfolio, sure, stuff happens all the time. Stuff happens when we're doing real estate. It's real estate, but they know how to move and they know how to ask questions and they know who to come to when those questions come up. And that's really what it's all about. So when I do stuff like this, it's because I don't want people to come in and make moves without understanding that the basis of this is that there is a problem and there's a lot of investors and there's a lot of systemic issues that create the problem. And then there's a lot of investors who make it worse. Don't be one of them. Don't be one of them. All right. Okay. I think I'm done my rant. Yes. Awesome. All right. So I appreciate you guys for joining. Make sure those of you who are like on whether Instagram or YouTube or whatever, take the link to this YouTube and share it, right? Again, my point is that people understand so that they are not perpetuating the issue, but actually positioned to help solve it. And they can't do that without the data, without the information. So please, please, please share it. If you share it, tag me. Make sure you like the video on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to YouTube. I'm this close to hold myself accountable to doing this more often. So I know we were on here quite a lot last year, kind of got away from it. Don't worry. If you haven't seen us on YouTube, it's not because we're not here. It's because we're on Instagram. But best believe we're still on the streets getting the work done. I do hope to get more active on YouTube again because there's just a lot happening. NEXTGen, you already know the vibes. Y'all are the family. I am so committed to your success because your success is our success and Baltimore's success. And so you are family forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. I'm always here for all of you. And I'm excited for what this next phase brings for not only NEXTGen, not only us, but Baltimore as a whole. We have an opportunity to see a black city develop in a really positive way, and to learn from the things that happen from our neighboring cities. And that's critically important. So I plan to do my part. I really truly hope that you commit to doing yours. I am, again, right, our NEXTGen Accelerator is how we're able to really support folks. I don't have the time to do a whole lot of stuff via DM and all those types of things, but when you're in the group on those Wednesdays or whatever, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, depending on whatever day we have our live sessions, our live virtual coaching sessions, we're here to make sure that you are learning, that you are taking action, and to hold you accountable to accomplishing your own goals, right? But making sure we're doing this stuff the right way. So thanks for joining. Again, please share, please like, please comment, do all those good things. I hope to show up a little bit more for us publicly because there's plenty big stuff going on behind the scenes and behind closed doors in NEXTGen. So I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon. Bye.